In the days of the Roman Empire, legions were built to last for centuries. They fought in distant lands, crushed rebellions, and left their mark in stone and in history. Among them was one unit that stood out, a battle-hardened force present in some of Rome's greatest campaigns, led by famous generals and feared by its enemies. For over 150 years we can trace its movements with certainty, and then nothing. No records, no orders, no clear explanation. It simply disappears from history. Today we explore the mystery of Legio IX Hispana, the Roman soldiers who, according to legend, marched into the fog and never returned. Welcome. The story of the Ninth Legion begins in the final decades of the Roman Republic, during a time when Rome was rapidly expanding its power across the Mediterranean. Most historians believe it was first formed between 65 and 58 BC. In 58 BC, the Ninth came under the command of Julius Caesar. Caesar had just become governor of Cisalpine, Gaul, a region in northern Italy, and inherited several legions that were already stationed there. The Ninth was one of them. That same year, Caesar began his famous Gallic Wars, launching a campaign against the Helvetii, a large Celtic tribe that had been moving across what is now Switzerland and eastern France. The Ninth fought in these opening battles, gaining experience in large-scale warfare, far from the safety of Italy. Over the next years, the Legion was heavily involved in Caesar's campaigns in Gaul. They fought in sieges, open battles, and winter operations, facing not only the Gauls, but also Germanic tribes that crossed the Rhine. The discipline and endurance of the Legion were tested again and again in difficult conditions. In 49 BC, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, beginning the conflict with Pompey. The Ninth stayed loyal to their commander and marched with him against his rivals. In 48 BC, the Legion fought the Battle of Pharsalus in Greece. This was the decisive engagement of the civil war between Caesar's forces and those of Pompey. The Ninth fought as part of Caesar's main line, helping to secure a victory that forced Pompey to flee to Egypt. In the years that followed, the Ninth also took part in Caesar's African campaign against the remnants of Pompey's supporters, showing that it could adapt to very different battlefields and enemies. After Caesar's final victories, the Ninth was disbanded for a short time. In the late Republic, it was common to dissolve legions during peacetime because maintaining a standing army was expensive and politically risky. Veterans were given land, often in newly conquered territories, as a reward for their service, but the peace didn't last long. Following Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, Rome was thrown into another series of civil wars. Caesar's adopted heir, Octavian, later known as Augustus, needed experienced and loyal troops. The Ninth was recalled to service, with many of its veterans returning to the ranks. Under Octavian, the Legion fought in Sicily against Sextus Pompeius, who had built a powerful fleet and was disrupting Rome's grain supply. After this campaign, the Ninth was sent to Macedonia and later took part in the war against Mark Antony and Cleopatra. In 31 BC, at the Battle of Actium, Octavian's forces decisively defeated his rivals. The Ninth fought on the winning side once again, and after the victory, Octavian became the unchallenged ruler of Rome. With the new empire taking shape under Augustus, the Ninth was sent to Hispania. This time their mission was to complete the conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. The Cantabrian Wars, fought between 29 and 19 BC, were long and difficult campaigns against the Cantabri and the Ostures, fierce tribes who resisted Roman control. Fighting in the rugged mountains of northern Spain required persistence and adaptability, and the Ninth proved itself again in harsh conditions. When the wars ended in 19 BC, the Legion had helped secure one of Rome's final major territorial gains in the west. It was here that they earned the honorary title Hispania, meaning the Spanish. From then on, they were officially known as Legio IX Hispana. By the end of the 1st century, the Ninth was one of the most respected legions in the Roman army. It had served under two of the most famous leaders in Roman history, fought in major battles that shaped the future of the Republic and the Empire, and won honours in difficult campaigns. Its soldiers had marched thousands of kilometres, from Spain to Greece to Africa, and its name carried weight across the Empire. Like other veteran legions, it was destined to continue its service for centuries, building on its traditions and victories. Yet, as history would later show, the fate of the Ninth would be unlike that of most other Roman legions, and its story would end in mystery rather than in glory. In AD 43, the Roman Empire turned its attention to a large island across the Channel, Britain. The Emperor Claudius, eager to win military gold, launched a full-scale invasion. 4 legions formed the core of the invasion force, and among them was the veteran 9th Legion, Hispania. For soldiers who had marched across Europe, fought in Spain, and served in the Balkans, Britain was a new challenge. The island was home to many independent Celtic tribes, some of which had alliances with Rome, while others were firmly opposed to any foreign rule. The initial landing was led by Aulus Plautius, the appointed commander. The 9th fought alongside other legions to establish control over the southeast. Once the first campaign secured a foothold, the legions were assigned to garrison positions. The 9th was stationed in the area of Lincoln, known to the Romans as Lindum Colonia. The site was chosen for its strategic value. It lay at a natural gap between the Pennine Hills and the North Sea, acting as a barrier that helped separate rebellious tribes in the north from those already brought under Roman control in the south. From Lincoln, the 9th was tasked with pushing Rome's influence further north. Later their main base would be at York, or Eboracum, a fortress that would later grow into one of the most important cities in Roman Britain. From there the legion guarded the dangerous northern frontier. This was not a quiet posting. Beyond their lines were the Brigantes, a powerful tribe controlling much of northern England. Raids, uprisings and skirmishes were constant threats, and the soldiers of the 9th had to be ready for sudden fighting at any time. The most serious crisis of their early years in Britain came in AD 60 to 61, with the revolt led by Queen Boudica of the Iceni tribe. The Iceni lived in what is now Norfolk. After the death of her husband, who had been an ally of Rome, Roman officials ignored his will, seized his lands, and humiliated his family. This sparked a massive rebellion. The Iceni were joined by other tribes, and their forces swept across the province, destroying Roman settlements. One of their first major targets was Colchester, then called Camalodunum, a Roman colonia where retired legionnaires had been settled. The town was lightly defended and soon came under siege. When news of the attack reached the 9th Legion, their commander, Quintus Petilius Seralius, marched with his troops from Lincoln to relieve the city. But the Celtic tribes knew they were coming. In open country near Colchester, Boudica's warriors set an ambush. The 9th's infantry, marching in open country, was surrounded and attacked from all sides. The Celtic warriors outnumbered them heavily, and the Roman line could not hold. Most of the legion's infantry was killed where they stood. Only the cavalry, faster and less encumbered, managed to escape the trap and ride back to safety. It was one of the worst defeats suffered by a Roman legion in Britain. Reinforcements were brought from other provinces, especially from the legions stationed in the German provinces across the Rhine. The 9th was rebuilt, its ranks filled with new soldiers, and had returned to duties in the north. The survival and restoration of the legion after such a blow showed the resilience of the Roman army and set the stage for the 9th's long and dangerous service on Britain's frontier. By the early 80s AD, Roman control in southern and central Britain was secure, but the north remained unstable. Beyond the frontier lay the territory the Romans called Caledonia, modern-day Scotland, home to many independent tribes who resisted Roman rule. In AD 77, the governor of Britain, Gnaeus Julius Agricola, began a series of campaigns to bring these lands under Roman control. The 9th Legion, still stationed in the north, played a part in this push. In AD 82 or 83, the 9th faced one of its most dangerous moments. According to the historian Tacitus, the Caledonians planned a surprise night attack on a Roman fort where the 9th was stationed. The legionnaires were sleeping when the attack came. Warriors broke into the camp, and fierce hand-to-hand fighting began in the dark. The 9th was close to being overwhelmed, if not for a relief cavalry force that Agricola sent to aid them. The fort might have fallen and the entire legion might have been destroyed. Their sudden arrival turned the tide, and the Caledonians were forced to withdraw. The 9th had survived, but the incident showed just how dangerous campaigning in the far north could be. That same year, Agricola led his forces deep into Caledonia for what would be the climax of his northern campaigns. The decisive engagement came at the Battle of Mons Graupius, fought somewhere in northern Scotland. Tacitus claims that Agricola's army inflicted a crushing defeat on the Caledonian tribes, killing thousands while suffering only light losses. The exact role of the Ninth in this battle is not recorded in detail, but given its presence in the region and its position among the main Roman forces, it is very likely the legion took part. The battle was presented as a major Roman victory, although the Romans never established lasting control over Caledonia. After Agricola was recalled to Rome, the frontier gradually retreated south again. In the decades that followed, the Ninth remained based in Eboracum in northern Britain. It was a key military and administrative centre for the province and a vital stronghold against unrest from the north. Around AD 108, the legion undertook a major project to rebuild the fortresses in stone, replacing the old timber structures. This work was commemorated with an inscribed stone tablet, which recorded the involvement of the Ninth Legion in constructing one of the fortress gates. This inscription, discovered centuries later, is the last definite and datable piece of evidence placing the Ninth in Britain. After this point, the historical record becomes silent. There are no definitive inscriptions or documents that can place the Ninth in Britain or anywhere else in the Roman Empire with certainty. For a unit that had served Rome for more than a century and a half, fought in some of its most famous campaigns, and survived disasters that might have ended other legions, this sudden disappearance from the written record is highly unusual. After the year 108, when the inscription at York was made, the Ninth Legion simply disappears from the British record. This silence gave rise to one of the most famous stories in Roman military history. The traditional legend says that sometime after 108, the legion was ordered to march north into Caledonia to deal with a rebellion. The northern tribes, fierce and determined to keep their independence, were said to have gathered in large numbers. The Ninth, veterans of many campaigns, moved into the mist-covered highlands to meet them. According to this version, they never returned. In the legend, the legion was surrounded and wiped out in the wilds of Scotland. This combination of dangerous terrain, hostile warriors, and the isolation of operating far from their base made survival impossible. Over time, this story took on an almost mythical tone. The image of thousands of disciplined Roman soldiers swallowed up by fog and silence has a powerful appeal. It has been retold in many forms. The most famous modern version appears in Rosemary Sutcliffe's 1954 novel The Eagle of the Ninth, which imagines a young Roman officer's quest to discover the fate of the lost legion and recover its standard. The novel's success kept the story alive for new generations, and it was adapted into the 2011 film The Eagle. Both the book and the film portray the Ninth's end as a dramatic disaster in the north of Britain. However, when historians examine the evidence, this traditional tale is much harder to confirm. No surviving Roman record describes such a battle, or even mentions the destruction of the Ninth in Britain. This is unusual because Rome was generally willing to record both victories and defeats, especially when a whole legion was involved. The loss of an entire legion was a rare event and normally received attention in official histories. The absence of a clear record raises questions. One possibility is that the legion was indeed destroyed in Britain, but the event was deliberately downplayed or omitted to avoid damaging imperial prestige. The reigning emperor, Hadrian, is known to have visited Britain around AD 122. If the Ninth had been lost shortly before his arrival, it might have been politically wise to focus attention on the construction of Hadrian's Wall and the reorganisation of the province rather than on a costly defeat. The Roman government could quietly replace the lost unit with another legion without making its disappearance a public matter. Another possibility is that the Ninth was not destroyed in Britain at all, but was instead moved elsewhere in the empire after 108 AD. The first hints that this might have happened came from archaeological discoveries in the Netherlands, far from Britain. At the site of this legendary fortress, in Novio-Major's Batavorum, modern Nijmegen, researchers have found roof tiles stamped with the mark of the Ninth Legion, inscriptions, and even a silver-plated bronze military medal. These finds have been dated to around AD 120, more than a decade after the last known evidence of the legion in York. The artefacts from Nijmegen are strong evidence that at least part of the Ninth was present on the Rhine frontier in the early 2nd century. This was a region of strategic importance where Roman forces often faced raids and unrest from Germanic tribes across the river. The presence of senior officers' inscriptions at the site suggests that these were not just a handful of men detached from the main legion, but likely a significant portion of the unit. Still, the evidence is not complete. The key question is whether the entire legion had been transferred to Nijmegen, or whether these finds represent only a detachment, perhaps survivors of an earlier disaster in Britain who were assigned to other units. Tile stamps and individual belongings can confirm the presence of soldiers from the 9th, but they do not persuasively suggest the whole legion was there. Sending detachments to reinforce embattled borders was common practice, and soldiers from the 9th had been temporarily stationed on the border with Germania before. Without written records to explain the movement, historians are left to piece together the story from scattered clues. That leaves us with two very different pictures. In one, the 9th met its end in the misty hills of Scotland, destroyed by hostile tribes and remembered only in legend. In the other, the legion survived Britain, but left under unknown circumstances, appearing briefly on the Rhine before disappearing from history altogether. Both possibilities keep the mystery alive, and both rest on fragments of evidence rather than firm conclusions. So what exactly happened to the 9th Legion after it vanished from the historical record? Historians have debated this question for decades, and three main theories have emerged. Each one offers a possible explanation, yet none can be proven beyond doubt. The first theory follows the traditional line of thought. The 9th met its end somewhere in northern Britain. After the last firm evidence of the legion in York around AD 108, unrest may have broken out among the Brigantes in northern England or the Caledonians beyond the frontier. In this version, the legion was sent to crush the rebellion, but was overwhelmed. Without reinforcements close at hand and operating in hostile territory, the 9th could have been destroyed in a single disastrous encounter. Supporters of this theory point to the fact that Emperor Hadrian visited Britain in AD 122 and soon afterwards ordered the construction of Hadrian's Wall. This massive stone barrier stretched across the width of northern Britain, separating Roman-controlled lands from the unconquered north. It is possible that the wall was a direct response to serious losses on the frontier, perhaps even the loss of an entire legion. Replacing the 9th with another legion and fortifying the border would have been a practical step to secure the province. However, the difficulty is the complete lack of written Roman sources confirming such a defeat. Roman historians of the time, while often selective in what they recorded, did not usually ignore the destruction of a whole legion. If this disaster did happen, it must have been quietly removed from public accounts, possibly to avoid embarrassment or unrest in other parts of the empire. A second theory places the end of the 9th far from Britain, in the province of Judea during the Bar Kokhba revolt. This was the third major Jewish uprising against Rome, and it broke out in AD 132. The revolt was fierce and well organized, led by Simon Bar Kokhba, who managed to establish an independent state for about 3 years. The Roman response was massive. Multiple legions were drawn from across the empire to crush the rebellion. One of these, the 22nd Diotoriana, is known to have disappeared from the record after this war, likely destroyed in the fighting. Some historians suggest that the 9th may have also been sent east to reinforce Roman forces in Judea. If so, it could have been wiped out in the same brutal campaigns that destroyed the 22nd. This theory fits with the Nijmegen evidence from around AD 120, which places the 9th on the continent. From there, the legion could have been redeployed to the eastern provinces before the outbreak of the revolt. The problem is that there is no surviving list of legions sent to Judea, so the presence of the 9th in this campaign remains unconfirmed. Without a written source or a clear archaeological find in the region, this remains speculation. The third theory pushes the 9th disappearance even later, into the reign of Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Between AD 161 and 166, Rome fought a major war against the Parthian Empire, its powerful eastern rival. The fighting extended into Armenia and Cappadocia, where a Roman force was surrounded and destroyed by Parthian troops. Ancient sources record that the commander, the governor of Cappadocia, committed suicide after the defeat. 2 legions were permanently stationed in Cappadocia at the time, the 12th Fulminata and the 15th Apollinaris, both of which survived long after the war. This means that the destroyed legion must have been a reinforcement from elsewhere. Some historians have suggested that this could have been the ninth. In this scenario, the legion would have survived for over 50 years after its last certain mention, only to meet its end in a catastrophic defeat far from Britain. The difficulty with this theory is the same as with the others. There is no direct evidence linking the ninth to the Parthian War. It also requires assuming that the legend left no trace in records or inscriptions for decades before its final destruction, which is unusual for such a large unit. Each of these theories explain part of the mystery, but none answers it completely. Annihilation in Britain would account for the sudden silence after AD 108, yet leaves us wondering about the Nijmegen finds. The Judea theory fits the timeline suggested by those finds, but lacks any direct proof of the legion's presence there. The Parthian theory is attractive because it pairs a known legion with an undocumented demise with a known defeat of an undocumented force, but it requires a long gap in the historical record that is hard to explain. Until new evidence emerges, the fate of the ninth remains one of the most enduring, unsolved puzzles of Roman history. Until the earth reveals more of its secrets, the fate of Legio IX Hispana will remain one of history's most intriguing unsolved mysteries. What do you think happened to them? Were they wiped out in Britain, sent east to meet their end in Judea, or lost on a distant battlefield against the Parthians? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoy uncovering the great mysteries of the past, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next video.